we talk about father wounds and mother wounds, and we know they're there because the enemy is that good. Mm-hmm. The enemy is that good at spinning this, even if they weren't overt wounds and somewhat more covert. It's not just what your mom and dad did to you. It's what your mom and dad maybe didn't do that they should have. With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson hanging out with SJ Jennings, exploring the kingdom and returning to tell stories about it.
Yes.
And this is a really interesting space for me to be in. Caleb, as he helps put together the schedule, and we, are talking about different things that we put out in front of us. Caleb made me and us aware that March is the 1 year anniversary of King Me being published. Mm-hmm. And so we ought to do a celebration podcast. So woohoo!
Here's King Me. 365 days of exploration. It
feels like it was just a minute ago that we were pulling the first box of soft covers and then hard covers out of their cases.
So we've gotten some new listeners, man. Can you tell a little bit of the background story? Like, where did the idea come from, really briefly? Because we've talked about that before. But we did a series on King Me when it first came out, so you can check those out. But really quickly, that and like, how long ago was it? What was the process like? And then we can get into stories of what's happened since.
And we can do all that right after.
Oh, yeah.
we come back after this quick message from Caleb.
Heart of the Warrior encounter. The reason why I suggest it to men and try to get them to come to Heart of the Warrior is Heart of the Warrior is the only event I've ever been to in my life where you're amongst a bunch of men, yet you're alone with God. And it gives you time to completely unplug and really come to grips with where you are in your life and talk to God and figure out where you want to go. You will see transformation everywhere at the encounter. You will see people, this happen right before your eyes. And you'll come home energized, and you'll want your family, you'll want your friends, you'll want everybody you come in contact with to enjoy the same gift that you have from going to a Heart of the Warrior encounter.
The Heart of a Warrior Encounter, April 25th through the 28th in Goshen, Virginia.
All right, we're back. So I'd love to do that. I just got to say, bro, it's a little weird. Like, I've had the opportunity to be on, 6 or 8 podcasts of other people.
Yeah.
And they're talking, but to be on your own podcast talking about your book, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah. I'll try to help you.
That I bet you will. I'm sure. So I think that so that's a little weird, but and I'm going through. We have our own small groups. You're in one on Monday night. I'm in another one on a Monday night, and we're not done. We're in.
No.
We started King Me when it came out. These friends of mine and I, and all of them. And so, I think we're on chapter 15 of 17.
Dude, you are like you're like sprinters compared to my group. I think we're on like chapter 5. After a year, literally.
That ain't you're giving me a that ain't nothing. That ain't nothing. That ain't nothing for your Brian Regan friends.
Yeah, so it's crazy how what it stirs up.
Yeah,
in men, and really, really interesting to talk with guys and, what did you hear? And then there's these stories start coming out.
So it's another weird thing to be in a group where guys will read things out loud. And yes, I love hearing some of the stories, and even for me, I don't know about other authors that have this experience, but for me, over some time, it's not like I'm reading my book. It's like I'm reading a book, and the things that are good and true and helpful, I find them being good and true and helpful to me.
Sure.
Even though the weirdness of I got to be the scribe, I got to be
you spent 3 years
the
working
stenographer.
On it.
I got to be the one that was writing it and spending that time in doing that. So it's really I think a book writing process for me, and this is King Me's the third book, all 3 books, and you were the one who came up with, dude, you got a trilogy.
Yeah.
So but all 3 of them, SJ, have significant reminders of where I was on my journey and what I was discovering. I mean, Exploring More is not a title just kind of, what would be a good title for our podcast?
Right.
It's just what we do. It's what we believe.
Yeah.
It's there's always more in the kingdom. There's always more healing. There's always more training. There's just always more with God. And so that's been that all that is prologue for this this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I want to just ask you a question, because I love what you said about it's not like you're reading your book, you're reading a book in your group and with these guys, which is great to think about. And we're always exploring more and searching and hoping for more healing and more to be revealed. And so in the process of having that small group, going through the book, almost disconnected from it after a year as the author itself, what are some things that have really resonated with you as a reader of the book a year after its release and a year since you finished, maybe a year and a half since you finished writing it? Because it took us some time to get it formatted and all that stuff, right? I mean, is there something, think of your Monday night groups and what's something like, oh man.
I'm a little bit distracted by just the significance of giving a big shout out to Bob Hardig, who is the editor of Heart of a Warrior and then King Me. So as you were speaking, I just thought of him and thought of the hours that he caddied for me, the hours that he walked with me in. Because for me, I heard I don't know who it was, if it was Tozier or C.S. Lewis. I heard like one of them wrote a book on a train ride, and I'm like,
in between cities, they wrote a book. Like,
what the hell, man? I wrote this like
How can
6
it be
times.
That easy? Yeah,
it's just crazy that, and I think part of it could be not the greatest writer, and have learned a lot from Bob in the process. But I love telling the stories. I love bringing the theological to the personal, and bringing what I remember Max Lucado said decades ago: bringing God near. Trying to bring God into a space where, from my experience, he's not. He was far away, and he's not really happy. He took it out on Jesus. So there was a lot of things that I got to recover from. From being so churched all my life up till my 30s, but. So a shout out to Bob. But
for sure.
So the other day was talking with a guy, and he had a book, and we just what he was going through, and I'm listening and kind of feeling his pain, and asked him where he was, kind of in the book, and he told me, and I said, well, jump to chapter 17. He's like, okay. He's in the masculine journey part 2, and you need to jump to 17. And so, having such a familiarity with the structure and the way the way it's laid out, and even shuffling that a few times. I mean, this guy needed to be reminded and to be equipped for the war that we're in over our hearts, over our beliefs, over our attitudes. And there's just a big dose of reality in 17. And so, we jumped there, and I mean, it wasn't like, hey, go home and read it and tell me. I mean, we went
You went
there
together.
Yes. And he read some of it out loud. I kind of pointed to a few things, and he said, we just need to hear this, because I have my reading voice in my head when I'm quiet in my chair, and so to have him read it out loud for him, his heart, and for mine, it was a sweet, as he kind of went, whoa, it wasn't a 2x4, it wasn't a slap, wake up. It was, come on, man, remember.
Yeah.
This crap like this happens to us because we live outside the garden and we're not home yet.
Right.
And so it is a battle in the spiritual realm. Therefore, we find ourselves in a battle in the physical realm, because we're in those two realms now, at the same time. So, things like that that was a really recent.
Just a couple days ago.
Yeah. Well, at the risk of sounding over, that made me feel good.
Yeah.
It made me, it encouraged me that landed on his heart well. So.
Yeah, man. And I think about, the hundreds of stories that we probably will never get to hear.
Yeah.
That are happening like that.
Yeah.
So the other thing that occurs to me too is like you write the book in a moment in time.
Right.
Not on a train from one town to the other in your case, but I don't know how many pages that was, but it couldn't have been that many. 300 something pages, 3 years, 3.5 years of work. You're in that every day, working on it, and then it gets released, and life does not stop moving.
Right.
So even though you wrote really from the perspective, here's where I'm at in 2021, 2020, 2022, what has happened in your life since the book released, a year ago? Is there something that's happened in your life that, the book has helped you maybe process, move through, you because of the process of writing the book, and even having we talk about this all the time, bro. When we talk about the encounter weekend, when you're doing a talk, you are the greatest student. You're the greatest receiver of information because you're working on your talk.
Yeah.
Same thing with
organizing
the book, right?
your thoughts.
Yes. Praying with God about where am I going with this? Where are we going together?
Where's he taking? That's right.
Exactly. So has there been a moment in the last year? And by the way, I'm putting Michael on the spot with these questions. I didn't prep him with these at all. So I know you've been, because we're close friends, I know you've been through some things in the last year. So has there been something where, man?
Well, two things. One, when it was coming out, and it's again, maybe songwriters and singers do the same thing, but when there's a publishing event to it, you think, you feel a bunch of things. I do. I feel, oh crap.
they're going to see my work.
Here we go again, and I've done it 3 times, and I just wasn't ready even the 3rd time. Like, remember, when it starts to move into people's hands, and there's sales, and there's exposure, and I mean exposure for criticism or exposure for disagreement, and yet I was very true to my journey with God. So the posture I think I've had too, SJ, has just been, I think I'm more like every guy than maybe somebody who, has arrived, in some theological, on some stage, and is, sharing the truth in just kind of strict biblical teaching, even though this book has probably as more than King Me and Heart of Warrior and Search and Rescue together. So
we've had some guys who know what they're talking about, 60, 70-year-old men who've been walking with Jesus in a biblical space for 50 years. Have said there's nothing in here that isn't biblical.
So and that they, when you hear from some of the older men who kind of have the prowess of their journey and maybe are theologically trained and in pastoral or ministry spaces, say, this is your best book, or you have a way of connecting some dots, like I said, bringing God near, that just feels really wonderful. But the thing that, when the book a year ago is now, available, so that's a weird thing of, oh my gosh, it's here we go. People get to, hear and read my stories about how this looks in my life, and the encounters that I've had and am having with God. So hold that, and then right next to it is this grieving process. I know. Wait, you're launching a book. This is a big deal, and
great accomplishment.
Yeah. And I have found myself, if there's such thing as postpartum for authors, I think I get it. When it just kind of happens, there's a bit of a funk, because most of for like you said, about 3 years, there was usually, not every day, but there was a lot of days when it was 6:30 a.m. until about 9:30 or 10. I couldn't do much more than that. I would come in between 9:30 and 10, and we'd kind of step into the world of Zoe. But those quiet spaces, I could tell you the chairs that I sat in, for different things, the couple writing trips, where it's just going to go for 3 or 4 days, and work with Bob. And and it is an intimate, for me anyway, and I think the style or the way that I might be viewed as an author is it's pretty intimate and personal, and that's I mean that with Jesus, with the Father, with the Holy Spirit. I remember Bob saying, not a lot of people use the word Trinity as much as you do. I think we need to kind of dial that back.
Really?
Oh yeah. And I said, well, it's the Trinity to me. I like saying God, and God, I'm not going to not say God, but there's just the little things that even you get edited. That can be grieving, because I think I told you this is 300 pages. There's almost 200 pages edited out.
Right.
Of just things that were significant to me, and I'm almost finished with the workbook. And have actually put it in your inbox and a couple of our guys to just all right, would you help me write short stories? Give me 400 words of how does this chapter, section, place look and feel? What's God doing and showing you in your life? So there's that grieving kind of postpartum thing as well. And then the book tour was a lot of fun. We got to visit 18, I think, stops, and most of them arranged by alumni and allies. So that was just fun to be on the road at times. It wasn't like, a concert on the road. We would
a lot of times it was the home team, though. You were going.
Yes.
They know you. They know your other books.
Yeah.
They've been to conferences, and then would invite guys in that maybe were not as familiar.
Yeah. So one of my favorites was Dayton, Ohio, where Dayton, Ohio has. It's where I have the most books at the thrift stores now. If you look on Amazon and who's selling books, there's these bookstores in Dayton.
Yeah.
Well, it's because we've sold thousands of copies in Dayton.
Yeah.
Because of these maniacs in a church that have brought a ton of guys to the event. So what was really fun about Dayton was at the church and the book tour was setting up shop after we had shared with these guys, and we had a lot of guys that we knew from Heart of Warrior and from Encounter Weekends, and so they just did a great job. I don't know, 450, 500 guys. They made a big evening of it, but afterwards, the guys, they get their books, because they had paid something to be at this event, and I had never signed so many copies in my life in one spot. I mean, I was starting to spell Michelle, Miguel, Alan, it was just good.
You signed it so many times, you need a stamp.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And it's a privilege. And just to hear, for that literally 60 seconds per guy, and there was a couple hundred guys that were in line to have their book signed, to hear some of their stories and to hear them say things about Heart of a Warrior, or they were picking up their copy, but they already had, because it was a few months after the release. So
and stories of the groups. They do a group there in Dayton every Wednesday morning, every Wednesday evening.
To see what God was doing there.
It's really cool.
And then the last thing you made me think of with the question was, just losing my mom in January, and writing about the masculine journey, the king stage, and wounding and healing and validation, initiation. I would say this to our listeners: so much of the book, and Heart of Warrior has this element too, is to help a man recover from his past so he can start living way more in the now.
Right.
It's not that this makes you bulletproof or the battle doesn't. This actually equips you to hopefully deal with things in the moment, in the season.
Get closer to Neo. No, Neo, and so, I'm telling you, when you're ready, you won't have to dodge bullets. You can just stop them.
So we were talking on the porch yesterday about another film called The Natural with Roy Hobbs.
Yeah,
and
great one.
With my mom passing, if you know the story about Roy Hobbs, he was this promising young pitcher, played by Robert Redford. And on the train ride, he kind of, a woman basically intercepts him and is a psychopath and shoots him. Well, if you haven't seen The Natural, I'm going to give you the giveaway here. I'm going to spoil it.
It came out 30-something years ago.
So great film. And what happened is they didn't get the bullet out, or he was living with it.
Yeah.
So I tell you that story, and I said that story yesterday because, there's some things that I feel like that spot, with my mom, the good and the not so, couldn't really even be touched. It's kind of like with Roy Hobbs. He's making a comeback in baseball. He's, he's I think it's in the 40s or 30s, and he's in the papers. It's a great timepiece of a baseball film. But now they're in the pennant game, and this thing comes up. It comes up at this time, and my point is, some of this stuff comes up at a time, and with my mom's passing, the interaction with my family, my own story with my mom. We talk about father wounds and mother wounds, and we know they're there because the enemy is that good. The enemy is that good at spinning this, even if they weren't overt wounds and somewhat more covert. It's not just what your mom and dad did to you. It's what your mom and dad maybe didn't do that they should have. So anyway, I feel like there's been a digging at that and a moving toward that, and it's been there a long time.
Right. And
yet, only in this time could I take what I've experienced and even written about and ask Jesus the kind of question that we believers, Jesus, what is this? Why am I? And this happened, his answer, why I can use the natural, this happened a long time ago.
Right. You've been carrying this around.
Around for a while. I'm like, really, when?
Yeah.
And so it's, those sore places are just invitations to intimacy. And it's been a sweet part of the grieving process of loss. But I'm not just grieving my mom's leaving. I'm grieving some of my younger places. You ever heard somebody say,
missed opportunities?
There's a part of me that feels this and a part of me that feels that. That's what I'm talking about. Those are usually, that's code and cryptic for, I bet you one of those is a younger place.
Yep.
That your boy is hurting.
Yep.
And your warrior is mad. And the sage that you aren't yet just knows better wisely that you shouldn't be either of those.
Right. And without the context of the larger story, the masculine journey, everything that you talk about in this book, you don't have context to understand what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I didn't.
I didn't either. The thing is, I didn't know I didn't know.
Yeah. So that process, it's a great question, and I appreciate how loaded it is, and where I was with the launching of the book, but even where I've been in the last few weeks, and how what I've written we've said this before, it's just more true. The things that I have recovered from, they've brought me to this place and helped me recover from this.
Right.
So it's really.
Thank you for sharing that, dude.
Yeah.
I've got a little bit of a surprise. I'm gonna, for Caleb too. I printed out a couple of reviews from Amazon to turn into a little bit back into, how this book has been found and received. And I've got one from a guy named Ron Gasho.
Oh my goodness.
He left a review just about a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, right after it came out. He said, the King Me concept of navigating a life game of checkers. You move across the board, achieving kingship and claiming new power and influence. As an older Michael Thompson reader, I love that, it resounded with me. My game of life is not over. I'm not retired. I'm redeployed. I can still be in the game. I also ordered copies for my son and grandson.
Yeah.
The message crosses generational lines and is vitally needed in the cultural and spiritual battles we face each day. I know my copy of King Me will be as worn, highlighted, and dog-eared as my other Michael Thompson books.
That's sweet.
Gasho.
Yeah. For our listeners, Ron passed away shortly after that. and I got to be a part of his memorial service. So to hear, he was one of our first elder sages on the original elder sage invites. Ron was and would have continued to have been a personally an elder sage for me. Not a cheerleader, not a not a reviewer.
Yeah.
But yeah. So to hear his name today, and to hear his contribution that lives on Amazon as some other things that he. I think of Lynn Scherler. I think of obviously Ron's family. So that's a really, that's a
Here's to Ron.
Here's to Ron. That's a beautiful way to bring. It's about a few months from now will be the 1 year for Ron.
A year, yeah. So I've got another one real quick. That's just a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Michael's latest book, King Me, takes what I learned in Heart of a Warrior to the next level. This book has helped me to understand how to be a better small K king in my small K kingdom by helping me realize that my father was a wounded man and wounded folks wound others. For example, as I was reading chapter 12, Becoming You, God helped me to realize that I had never forgiven my father for the wounding he had caused in my life. The Holy Spirit helped me to understand that my dad did love me, but the wounds from his own childhood had manifested into my life. Forgive him, I heard. I did, and for the first time in a long time, I started thinking about my father differently, more positively. The unforgiveness was lifted off of me. Not sure where this will take me just yet, but I clearly understand this is part of my healing process. Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for once again writing and sharing life-changing information. I am a changed man, and my relationship with the Lord is improving daily. Through reading your books and exploring them with my brothers at Hope Church's men's ministry, I am becoming oriented and more prepared to truly become the warrior God intended me to be. To all this, I say amen and amen.
Yeah, wow, that's really fun. It's fun because there's a mindfulness. You're writing it because you're compelled to. That's one thing, but you're also writing because you're so hopeful that something that you found on your journey would help another journeyman on his. And so that's just, I feel like sometimes when I get something personal like that comes in my inbox, it's just not, it's not hard to say. It's so true to be able to text back or email back. It's so great to meet you, to meet one of the men I got to write this for.
Yeah.
Great to meet you.
Yeah.
And that common ground that we have in the masculine journey with masculine hearts is, it's really fun when you're standing at your bus stop and some guy, comes walking up and there you stand together for just a minute. And so that's really cool. I like that.
It can be holy ground. Those
very
moments,
much.
Man. You feel like you want to take your shoes off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the man that he and the Lord and yes, some pages that we gave him, but man, he's got a shot at not doing to his kids.
Absolutely. He's
got a shot at doing for his kids. He's, that awareness and awakening can lead to really, really strong places.
No doubt. So, generational.
Generational.
So speaking of that, as we think about moving forward into year 2 of King Me being released, and with what we've talked about for a few of the last podcast episodes, redeeming generational masculinity.
Yeah.
How do we see in the next year moving forward how King Me is important to the message of redeeming generational masculinity moving forward?
Yeah, we're in those conversations quite a bit right now. And I know we're running out of time for this episode, and we're going to talk more about that in a few. I think Caleb, a couple episodes for 2 episodes for
So
we'll keep talking.
We'll keep talking.
But it was something. It wasn't why I wrote the book. It was something that God did in this year through some of the book tours. And the book tours are great, but nobody's really read it when you're doing a book tour.
Right.
They're getting their books.
Introducing them to it. Yeah.
So reviews, that's a different posture.
Right.
Even though I can, it feels sometimes like at the book tours you're just doing a big infomercial, which I don't like, and are trying to get, these guys interested in what you have to say or what you wrote. And that's why it's so fun to do these with allies, because they're typically hosting and promoting that night. Right. But this is 4 or 5 months ago. The working on the journal workbook, seeing again the stages of the masculine journey, which we've talked about for years. It was, I don't know, like when you put some tinted glasses on and it just, like driving glasses.
Jimmy Mack said you put them on and you can see the invisible ink all of a sudden.
Or things become crisper or clearer.
It's just in a different shade.
That's kind of, it was kind of like that where, oh my gosh, we had already started the Elder Sage Initiative just to have an important role for older men to play in the lives of younger men, kings and warriors.
That's what Ron was alluding to.
I know, and I love it, but I didn't have the banner.
Yeah,
I didn't have the title over it, and that's what when generational masculinity, like he just wrote about with my father,
right?
Fathers and sons, brothers in the kingdom, is in trouble. Has been, that's where then redeeming and seeing what King Me talks about as these coordinates of healing, training, validation, and initiation, kind of over and over. It's
cyclical.
It's not just one merit badge, but a merit badge that you keep earning by entering into these intimate spaces with God to recover. So the redeeming generational masculinity, we've thrown words around like rebelling, a great rebellion, and we love Star Wars from when we were a kid.
Of course,
Neo, they're rebelling against the Matrix. So there is this attitude of against evil and against an enemy that comes to steal, kill, and destroy. There's a rebellion, and the rebellion is what leads to a reformation.
Yeah,
and that's different. You have to break through with the rebellion, and then you have a chance to make your own country. Or in this case, you have a chance to reestablish Aslan's country.
Oh man,
the kingdom.
Can we awaken these men
to it?
Yeah, man.
Rebel against the enemy and step into the great reformation before Jesus comes and really ends the war and takes us into. That space that we were meant for. We get the garden back. So we're in those chapters and redeeming generational masculinity. If we get a decade or we get another 100 years, before or longer, this work feels worthy of our time, of our talent, of our treasure, of our attention. And if you remember in Patriot when the flag and the militia are going the other way, and they're starting to get overrun. And Mel Gibson's character, cannot remember his name, Captain.
Yeah,
and he grabs that flag and runs, and the other, many of them his friends, they like, oh, we're going.
Yeah, they start to turn back around from the retreat.
We're going
into the battle.
Into the fray.
Yeah,
and so I think this generation. Morgan Snyder, I've heard him say it many times that every generation has to find the gospel for themselves, and I think the wild thing is, I used to think that was just the 20 and 30 somethings now.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm.
My contemporaries, my compadres, my 40s and 50 somethings, they need to find the gospel.
Yeah.
The 60 and 70 somethings need, because we have men that step into our circle that are 72 years old, and it's their freshman year.
Absolutely.
In orientation, in getting their hearts back, right? Or it's great when they're Caleb's age. You know, it's great when they're 25, and we envy those guys.
Yes.
What if we would have
If
got
I
this?
had some of this,
I mean,
back then.
I started at 38. That's when it went.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute.
That's so funny. I was 38.
Were you
the
38?
first Top Gun I came to.
I believe it.
Yeah.
38, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, and I had enough church, and went to seminary, got the biblical counseling degree, so I had enough knowledge, but I didn't have enough really practical training.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I'm hopeful King Me can help a man bring whatever he's gotten theologically into whatever he is living in his reality, and it works.
Yeah.
And he starts to overcome what isn't true about him, about God, about others, and becomes who he's known, how he's known, and who he is in the kingdom. So
yes.
So
Amen
moving
to that,
across
bro.
the board, becoming that new piece,
Yeah.
boom, you know.
And then you can move.
Yeah. So King Me is
More
more, I
strategically.
would say, SJ, King Me is more true for me and more important to me than a year ago.
Yeah.
And singing the songs and doing in the concerts and stuff. I've always wondered about artists who, how do they just put energy into that song?
That song
One of their greatest hits.
4,000 times. Yeah.
And you know, there's a way that happens, and I'm enjoying that with King Me, Heart of a Warrior, even Search and Rescue, but definitely with King Me, and look forward to where God's going to take us.
Yeah, so. I've found this to be true about very few books in my life, but this is one of them. You know, some books you read, and you might say, "Man, that was great," or "I pulled this out, and I could really apply that to my life." I have found that this is a book, and this is why it's taking our group so long to go through it, because it is a book where you get information and training and understanding, but it's a way to live. And
that's great to hear. Yeah,
it's not one that I would say anyone that's read it before, don't just read it and put it on your shelf. Pick it back up again,
or lead a couple guys through it, like you said.
Like Michael just said, it's a year later. He's in a very different place now. The book means something different to him, and he's the author.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to, let's talk about what it means to live this way in the kingdom.
And I think
this is a guidebook to living this way.
And I think this will set us up for redeeming generational masculinity.
100%.
Maybe Caleb knew that and is going
100%.
like, we're finally catching up to his wily ways. But
so
anyway.
Caleb's going to throw the links in the description, but ZoeOutpost.com, you can pick up King Me. KingMeBook.com, I think, is the other website if you want more information specifically about the book.
Oh, and there's a new website. It's my favorite.
It is, yes. Say it, please.
You can go to michaelthompson.me.
Yes.
Me. It's about me.
It's not, though.
No,
if anybody that knows you knows it's not.
It's a place
but it's a place for you to share.
It's a place where content is shared. And,
some of your heart,
and
specifically.
And I love Josh, and he sold me on the idea. Yeah, we really need to do this. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, it's out there too.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah. Thanks for the questions, and you can land it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening to the Exploring More podcast. Thanks for sharing, Michael. We want to ask you to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment below. And as a matter of fact, I've got comment of the week here. This is a new thing that Caleb has us doing. Michael Howell 2655 said, "Oh, brothers, I so needed this message today. Thank you for the reminder of the goodness of my heart that was ransomed by Jesus. I was feeling sadness this morning that I just couldn't name or explain, And this podcast lifted this spirit of condemnation almost immediately. Love you, brothers. Thank you so much for that,
really
Michael.
Kind.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We love hearing stories and comments like that, and for you guys to, boldly share that you're struggling, and this is a guy that's struggling, but he's struggling well. Well done, Michael. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time on the Exploring More podcast.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.